At over 8,000 meters deep, scientists expected sediment and rock, but found precision. A perfect hexagon, rhythmic signals, and gravity anomalies hint at something engineered, not natural. What lies beneath the Puerto Rico Trench isn't just strange. It might be active, and what it's doing down there could change everything we know. Descent into the unknown. The Puerto Rico Trench, stretching over 530 miles and diving to a staggering 27,480 feet, around 8,380 meters, is the deepest point in the Atlantic Ocean, plunging deeper than the height of Mount Everest. This vast submarine canyon marks the boundary between the North American and Caribbean tectonic plates, a place where immense geological forces clash in silence beneath the waves. For generations, it remained a blank patch on ocean maps, forgotten, neglected, and largely unexplored, overshadowed by the infamous Mariana Trench in the Pacific. That all changed in December 2018. It was then that Victor Vescovo, an American deep-sea explorer, former naval intelligence officer, and one of the world's few 5 Deeps adventurers, descended into the trench's heart aboard the DS-5 Limiting Factor, a titanium-hulled submersible engineered to withstand the immense pressure of Earth's deepest environments. Supporting the mission was the research ship DSSV Pressure Drop, equipped with the cutting-edge Kongsberg EM-124 multi-beam sonar, capable of painting the trench floor in high-resolution detail. Until then, the trench had been a scientific blind spot, a place so deep and so remote that it might as well have been on another planet. But within hours of deployment, sonar imaging revealed what decades of speculation had missed. Not a chaotic jumble of underwater cliffs and sediment, but patterns, symmetries, lines, shapes. This wasn't just another record-breaking dive. It was a revelation. It felt like falling into another world, one sonar operator whispered in the mission log, but parts of that world didn't feel random. They felt constructed. The data stunned even the most seasoned oceanographers. Features began to emerge from the deep, not just ridges and slopes, but flat plains, sharply angled contours, and echoes that didn't match any known natural formations. What had been a blank patch on geological records was now brimming with questions, and none of them had easy answers. This wasn't a crash course in deep-sea geology anymore. It was something else entirely. The team's objective, mapping the Atlantic's most inaccessible point, had been achieved. But as the sonar painted a clearer picture of the ocean floor, it unveiled something utterly unexpected. A region of seabed that didn't just break the rules of tectonics, but challenged the very definition of what was natural. Vescovo later described the moment in an interview. "We expected geology. What we saw felt deliberate. The mission pivoted overnight. Scientific curiosity morphed into stunned silence as the crew prepared for another pass. The sonar would sweep the area again. The submersible would descend one more time, and this time they'd be watching for something far more mysterious than rock and sediment. Because now they weren't just exploring depth, they were staring into the unknown. The first anomaly, geometry in the abyss. Roughly 8,300 meters below sea level, amid the crushing pressure and black silence of the Puerto Rico Trench, something caught the sonar team completely off guard. This part of the ocean, known for its chaotic geological makeup and the unrelenting violence of tectonic subduction, should have looked like any other deep-sea floor: fractured ridges, rolling sediment, and the erratic scarring of time and pressure. But what appeared on the screen wasn't a mess of random geology. It was a perfect shape, a flat, symmetrical formation carved into the trench slope. The object was a hexagon, not roughly shaped, perfect. 6 straight sides, each meeting at precise 120-degree angles, etched into the abyss like a monument lost to time. Multiple sonar sweeps, using the Kongsberg EM-124 multi-beam system, confirmed the anomaly. It wasn't a sonar artifact. It wasn't a data glitch. It was there, immovable and geometrically exact. Straight edges don't occur naturally at these depths, not at this scale, not under these pressures. The immense weight of the ocean above, over 8,000 meters of water, crushes most formations into jagged, organic chaos. And yet here stood something that defied the randomness of geology. "It looked drawn," one technician remarked. Another simply stared at the scan, repeating, "That shouldn't be down there." Even hardened marine geologists, those who had mapped volcanic ridges, underwater mountain ranges, and hydrothermal vents, couldn't explain it. One entry in the expedition log read, "No tectonic process we know of creates this. The math is too clean." The object wasn't just symmetrical, it was deeply anomalous. Its edges were sharp, its base unnaturally level. And most puzzling of all, its size, roughly 200 meters across, wasn't random. It was consistent, measured, and placed as though it belonged to something larger. Perhaps a fragment, perhaps a node. No one knew, but everyone knew this. It didn't look geological. As the team descended further to capture video confirmation, the atmosphere shifted from curiosity to unease. Scientists argued in hushed tones. Engineers double-checked the instruments. One ROV pilot asked quietly, "If this isn't natural, what's it doing here?" Because if nature didn't carve this shape, and there was no evidence that it could, then something else did. That's when the sound began. Low, rhythmic, not seismic noise, not the hum of distant machinery, and definitely not the submersible. It pulsed through the water like a heartbeat, repeating every few seconds, steady and deliberate. The team froze, and the shape was one thing, the sound was another. But together they suggested a horrifying possibility, that this wasn't just a ruin, it was active. Something beneath the trench wasn't just waiting to be found, it was sending a signal, and that meant this anomaly was far from dead. The sound that shouldn't exist. Soon after discovering the hexagonal structure, the team deployed hydrophones, underwater microphones, along with electromagnetic sensors to monitor any environmental signals around the anomaly. What they captured stunned even the most skeptical researchers. From the trench's depths, a sequence of low-frequency pulses began to echo, repeating in mathematical intervals. These pulses weren't random like seismic tremors or the creaking of tectonic plates. They came at exact frequencies: 12 hertz, 18 hertz, 27 hertz, a clear harmonic progression. In plain terms, the pattern felt deliberate, purposeful. The next question was obvious. Could this be interference from the submersible or surface vessel? Tests were run, isolating every possible source of man-made vibration. But even after limiting factors surfaced and was powered down, the signals continued, uninterrupted and unignorable. It wasn't just sound either. Electromagnetic pulses mirrored the audio signals in perfect sync. Every beat of noise came with a magnetic pulse, creating a dual signal, as if something was broadcasting deep beneath the earth. The research logs began to fill with theories. Could this be a deep-sea resonance phenomenon, some previously undocumented natural event? Or was it more sinister? As one technician put it, the signal behaves more like a transmission than a geological echo. No known geological mechanism in the Puerto Rico Trench matches these sound patterns. There are no active volcanoes, no known hydrothermal vents, and no documented species living in this part of the trench are capable of producing such structured frequencies. What's more chilling is how the signal grew stronger the closer the instruments moved toward the hexagonal structure. It wasn't just present in the area, it was centered there. The very floor of the trench seemed to respond, as if it were alive, or at least active. What began as a passive survey had turned into a listening session, where the ocean itself was emitting signals no one could decode. A system at the bottom of the world was broadcasting, but to whom and why? This led to the next phase of exploration, an attempt to see, with precision, exactly what lay beneath the anomaly's surface. Confirmation. High-resolution mapping. In early 2020, a follow-up international expedition returned to the site, determined to capture what previous missions couldn't. This time, they brought autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, equipped with ultra-high-resolution sonar and optical imaging systems. What came back wasn't just clearer data, it was startling. The hexagonal structure was even larger than originally thought, over 200 meters in diameter, with radial grooves stretching from each side like spokes on an ancient wheel. The corners of the hexagon were perfectly formed, deviating less than 0.2 degrees from exact geometry. Nature, with all its chaos and entropy, doesn't make shapes like this. But machines, or minds, do. ROVs collected samples from the anomaly's surface, which added another layer of strangeness. The material was denser than typical seafloor rock, and spectral analysis showed traces of titanium, iridium, and other metals rarely found in ocean crust. Some researchers speculated these were composite alloys, materials engineered, not naturally occurring. Even more disturbing were the magnetic field readings. The anomaly was surrounded by localized magnetic pulses, fluctuating in strength and direction, out of sync with the Earth's known geomagnetic patterns. As one physicist noted, it's like a controlled field. Something's turning it on and off. Taken together, its perfect geometry, the exotic material, the magnetic emissions, this wasn't just a strange object. It was a machine, or at the very least, a system. The only question was, what kind of system, and for what purpose? As the data piled up, it became clear that this site wasn't an isolated oddity. In fact, it was part of something bigger. Life around the machine. As the ROVs hovered over the structure's surface, something unexpected began to emerge. Not from the rock, but from the dark water around it. Strange translucent organisms appeared, drifting slowly into view. They resembled eel-like shapes and jellyfish-like entities, but with features no marine biologist had seen before. Some had glowing nodes along their bodies. Others moved in ways that didn't follow known patterns of locomotion. But most notably, their behavior was highly specific. One eel-shaped form floated near the hexagon's edge, then emitted 3 precise flashes of blue bioluminescence, each spaced exactly 1.4 seconds apart. That's not random. That's a signal. Another jellyfish-like entity hovered directly over one of the radial grooves and remained motionless for hours, gently pulsating in rhythm, with the low-frequency vibrations detected by hydrophones. The team watching the feed began to whisper the unthinkable. Are they communicating with it? Genetic analysis of collected tissue samples confirmed these were unknown species. Their amino acid sequences were unlike anything in existing databases, suggesting they evolved in isolation from known oceanic life. More eerily, their anatomy lacked eyes but featured pressure-sensitive nodes, suggesting they see through sensing energy shifts, possibly electromagnetic. But the real shock was how they moved. These were not passive deep-sea drifters. They followed paths, looped around the structure, paused in near-perfect intervals, and returned again and again, like guardians, or maybe worshippers. One marine biologist watching the footage reportedly said, "It's like they've been waiting." Waiting for what, or for whom, remained unanswered. But the connection between these life forms and the hexagon beneath them could no longer be denied. The final clue, though, wouldn't come from below, but from above. Gravity deflection, the surface clue. While the mystery deep beneath the Puerto Rico Trench grew darker, satellites orbiting Earth were picking up something even stranger, from space. High-resolution satellite altimetry, which measures subtle changes in sea surface height, revealed a consistent dip, a roughly 10-centimeter depression in the ocean's surface, directly above the hexagonal structure. At first glance, that might not sound alarming, but to oceanographers and geophysicists, it set off immediate alarms. This kind of depression isn't caused by waves or weather. It's a gravitational anomaly, where a dense mass below exerts enough force to literally pull the ocean downward. Over the Puerto Rico Trench, that force wasn't just unusual, it was among the most extreme ever recorded. The anomaly measured around -380 milligauss, mgal, putting it in the same category as the infamous Indian Ocean gravity hole, but much more compact and precise. Most such gravity dips are caused by vast, subducted tectonic slabs, lingering masses of cold lithosphere pulled under continental plates. But here, in a structure only 200 meters wide, the effect was too concentrated, too localized. One researcher put it bluntly, that level of gravity pull over that small an area shouldn't exist, not unless something extremely dense and extremely specific is buried directly under the trench floor. Modeling the data ruled out traditional causes like subduction mass, mineral concentrations, or thermal anomalies. What was left? A compact, heavy object, possibly made of high-density alloys, buried within the Earth's crust at impossible depth. Not natural, not explained. And worst of all, unchanging for decades, according to archived satellite records dating back to the early 1990s. This led to a terrifying conclusion. Whatever was beneath the Puerto Rico Trench had been there long before we knew how to detect it. The gravity anomaly wasn't just a side effect, it was evidence. Something massive and precise is embedded below, and it's having a direct, measurable impact on Earth's gravitational field. Think about that. An object so dense, so compact, and so immovable that it warps gravity from space. It also aligned perfectly with the location of the acoustic pulses and the electromagnetic emissions. All signs pointed to one conclusion. This was not a geological fluke. This was a design system, reacting, emitting, and altering Earth itself. As one physicist on the team whispered during a closed session, if it's pulling on the ocean from 8 kilometers down, what else is it pulling on? This revelation forced researchers to rethink their assumptions, because if gravity was being shaped, not naturally but intentionally, then perhaps this wasn't a buried structure at all. Perhaps it was an active component, part of something larger. And before they could dismiss the idea, a second site emerged, over 500 miles away. A network emerges, the second site. By late 2023, just as research into the Puerto Rico Trench anomaly was being quietly shuttered, a second detection broke the silence. Nearly 515 miles southeast of the first site, in a remote sediment-covered section of the Caribbean Basin, sonar teams, originally conducting tectonic stress monitoring, picked up something eerily familiar. It was another hexagon, almost identical in geometry to the first, but slightly smaller, around 650 feet, approximately 198 meters, across. Like its predecessor, it had radial grooves extending from its center, and the sonar readings showed the same sharp angular precision. But this one was more buried, obscured by centuries of sediment drift, almost like it had been intentionally concealed. The coordinates raised immediate suspicion. When mapped, the two sites formed a near straight alignment intersecting a major tectonic hinge zone, the place where massive geological plates meet and shift. This wasn't just coincidence. The pattern was too clean, too precise. The new structure sat at a geologically critical point, almost like a keystone, something anchoring tectonic forces rather than reacting to them. Geologists began to consider the unthinkable. What if this wasn't two random anomalies? What if they were nodes in a larger geostructural network? A grid embedded in the Earth's most unstable zones, designed not by chance but by purpose. One analyst who leaked a classified overlay map said, "It's not just the locations, it's what they're aligned with. Volcano belts, fault lines, seismic hotspots. If these structures are connected, they're not passive, they're active, and they're managing something." In other words, the trench anomalies weren't isolated marvels. They might be functioning parts of a global system, operating unseen for centuries or longer. A machine buried in the planet itself, tuned to its violent, shifting crust. If true, this could explain the rhythmic signals, the magnetic pulses, even the biological patterns around them. But more alarmingly, it suggested that more of these nodes might be out there, hidden beneath sediment, frozen under polar ice, dormant, or waiting. And if we just found two in a single region, what's buried beneath other tectonic thresholds around the world? Silence and secrecy. What came next wasn't a scientific breakthrough, it was a shutdown. Within weeks of the second structure's detection, both research projects were pulled under national security protocols. Data archives were sealed, remote access servers were locked, and scheduled publications, some already peer-reviewed, were suddenly withdrawn. The scientific community was left in shock. A planned paper on the Puerto Rico anomaly, scheduled for release in Geophysical Research Letters, vanished from the preprint database. An email to the journal's editor was met with a cryptic response. "Delayed due to reclassification." Researchers began whispering in forums, hiding conversations behind encryption. A few leaked fragments, sonar maps, metadata logs, even a quote from an internal Pentagon memo. Geomechanical structures at trench sites classified under Tier 5 containment. No further details were given. Why the secrecy? These were geological findings, not nuclear tests. But as one anonymous geophysicist posted in a now-deleted thread, it's not just about what was found. It's about what it means. If those structures are active, if they're stabilizing tectonic stress, then tampering with them could trigger something catastrophic. In other words, the discovery wasn't just scientifically important, it was potentially dangerous. The sudden classification hinted at deeper implications: military, geopolitical, even planetary scale engineering. Was this a natural system we just didn't understand? Or something far older and far smarter than us? One final clue came from a scientist forced off the team. In a farewell message, they wrote, "You can't classify the Earth forever. People will find the rest, and when they do, they'll understand why they were hidden." And that mystery would only deepen in early 2025, when a massive leak broke the silence open again. The Forbidden Files. In early 2025, the silence broke, not with a statement, but with a leak. A whistleblower released a trove of internal documents, high-resolution bathymetric maps, spectral analysis reports, and a string of internal metadata logs pulled from classified geological archives. These files were raw, unfiltered, and undeniable. The documents revealed something shocking, something no scientific theory had prepared for. The spectral signatures from both trench sites didn't match any known natural rock or mineral classification. Instead, they revealed a composition of composite alloy materials, including trace signatures of titanium, zirconium, and unknown alloyed metals with electromagnetic properties inconsistent with Earth-based formation processes. Worse, there was no sediment buildup on the main structure. In one of the deepest, most geologically quiet parts of the ocean, where millennia of dust and organic matter should have accumulated, the structure remained bare, clean, almost like it was being maintained or maintaining itself. One log entry carried a phrase that jolted scientists who understood its implications. "Geoacoustic interface detected, frequency lock initiated." That line alone sent ripples through the geophysical community. It suggested the structure wasn't just sitting there. It was interacting. It responded to specific acoustic frequencies, locking onto them, much like a machine tuning to a resonant signal. That's when a hypothesis emerged, whispered first in private meetings, then posted anonymously to underground forums. This isn't just a structure. It's a geoacoustic control system. It modulates stress fields. It absorbs tectonic tension through sound. In other words, it was a stabilizer, a system buried deep within Earth's most volatile zones, managing seismic forces in real time using acoustic fields and gravitational manipulation. The implications were massive: earthquakes, tsunamis, fault ruptures. What if these were not entirely natural events, but the byproduct of a failing or adjusting system? What if the reason we've survived centuries of tectonic violence without complete catastrophe is because something deep beneath us has been holding the planet together? And suddenly, this wasn't just about the Puerto Rico Trench anymore. It was about the planet's survival, which led to the most chilling revelation of all. The final revelation: a planetary stabilizer? Buried deep in the leak was a summary report, marked internal use only, prepared by an unnamed agency. It made no mention of aliens, no grandiose claims, just data. But the conclusion was quietly earth-shattering. The anomaly wasn't geological, it wasn't biological, it wasn't even static. It was engineered. The structure was labeled as a stabilization node, an artificial construct designed to interface with both gravitational and acoustic systems at a planetary level. The line that stood out most read, "System integrity may be dependent on continued resonance." In other words, if these nodes stop resonating, if they're tampered with, buried, or destroyed, Earth's tectonic equilibrium could collapse. The system doesn't just exist, it may be essential. A stabilizer embedded so deep it has gone unnoticed for thousands of years, until now. The theory became chillingly clear. Earth may be alive with a machine older than history, a system we didn't build, a technology we don't understand, a network of deep ocean structures that could be managing seismic stress, preventing catastrophic earthquakes, absorbing energy, and distributing pressure across tectonic plates. And if it fails, entire fault systems could release centuries of pressure in moments. Speculation exploded. Some linked it to ancient civilizations, others to non-terrestrial engineering. But the core fact remained: humanity had just stumbled upon a planetary mechanism, and its discovery had shaken the foundations of geology, seismology, and even national security. One final quote in the report left a haunting echo: "The deep Atlantic is not inert. It is active. It is part of a system, and that system is not ours." With that, the true story of the Puerto Rico Trench became more than a mystery. It became a warning, a revelation buried in silence, gravity, and resonance echoing beneath our feet. The Puerto Rico Trench has kept its secrets hidden for millions of years, until now. From unexplainable geometry to signals and life that defy classification, every layer uncovered points to a system we barely understand. Is it ancient? Is it alive? Or is it something else entirely? Watching, regulating, or waiting? Whatever the truth, one thing is clear: this isn't just a deep-sea mystery. It challenges our science, our history, and maybe even our place on Earth. If the ocean is hiding structures like these, what else lies beneath? One thing is certain: we've only just scratched the surface.